Hello and welcome back to Lordenfel episode 7.5, How to Milk a Goat. So as we see in the slide below, the goat PBR prefab can be placed manually into the scene wherever we need to milk a goat. So note that in this case they are not spawned and the configuration is really simple. They just have a goat controller and the SK goat avatar and a sphere collider with a trigger set. Also, they have to be on the player interactable layer for the player to be able to interact with it. Just a note for those who are not sure about this yet. If you don't have a prefab of the model like the goat, you can start by taking the FBX file of the goat, drag it into the scene and then create a prefab, and then from then on use the prefab. Then when you want to make changes, just edit the prefab and update it accordingly. So looking at the script that we need to attach, again it's the interactable object script. We're going to do activation with enabled or trigger. For the action we're going to use the chest type action, which will utilize the goat milk loot table, and the loot table is configured to give us the goat milk once we milk the goat. We will also play the gathering animation with a delay of 0.25 seconds. We will play it on the object, and if this doesn't work you can try to play it on the user like that for the sound as well as the animation. But normally it works fine with gathering on the user and sound on the object. The state cooldown is set to 10 with the interaction time of 2 seconds, a maximum use distance of 3, and no special appearances, and the pop-up for telling the player what it is that he will do is milk goat. Looking closer at the goat controller, we see that it's just set up from entry to play the idle breathe animation. It's not looped, then it transitions to idle bar, then it transitions to idle look around and idle graze, and then back to breathe. So this loops through all of those clips. Here's a look at one of them, the idle breathe. Remember, loop time must not be enabled, to play only once. Looking at the goat at idle breathe import settings animation, we import the animation for idle breathe clip, no looping. Make sure you get your loop matches green if you can. Experiment with these settings until you do. And we utilize the has exit time check enabled to make sure that we, for instance, can transition from idle breathe to idle bar and so on. So like I said, the other clips are configured in the same way, from graze to breathe and so on. Graze to breathe, the transition with exit time. Here is the avatar which we get from the FBX model right there. Now let's take a look at the loot table for the goat. In RPG Builder we find it under economy, loot tables, goat milk. Base info is just called goat milk. Under items we link it to the goat milk item, which we have configured under economy items previously. We will only get one when we complete the milking exercise, and no other special requirements. Now let's look at the milk item detail. As we do this, I just wanted to point out that since the type is consumable, this makes it a bit more interesting, because the player can also drink the goat milk, and when he does so it will restore his energy. But that causes a bit of a problem for him, right? Because if he drinks the milk to restore his energy, he also can't complete the quest, at least not until he milks more goats. That's up to him. So under economy items, requirements, you cannot consume goat milk unless you have one, and when you do consume will reduce your count by 1, your milk count. And then, since it's supposed to restore his energy under economy items goat milk game action, we want to use a type of effect as a trigger to trigger the goat milk effect, which will make sure his energy is restored. And by the way, you can also sell it to a merchant for 1 coin, and you can stack 25 of them in each slot. So looking at combat effects goat milk, it says instant heal, but really what it is just apply it immediately. Apply what? Into which stat? So the altered vitality stat is called the energy stat in this case, and we will increase it by 20. Right at the start, we'll use this visual effect, heal pulse visual effect, and attach to the caster, which is the player. This is the configuration details for that. Looking at the combat stats, one of them is energy, and under its setup we can see the values for it. Some interesting things to point out is that the current default is 50, but it will start at 100% energy. Then depending on what the player does, and that can be many things, you can make him reduce energy when he fights, when he runs too long, and so on, when he blocks in a fight. Whatever you need to do, you can configure that here. Looking at the quest configuration, just as an introduction for those who don't know yet, let's look at this together. So quests can be created to encourage a player to interact with other characters. For example, the player's wife at the farmhouse might offer a small reward to him, in this case an apple, for milking their goat. So each quest can have 1 or more tasks to complete and then offer automatic and optional rewards when the player returns to the quest giver. So in some cases, quests can be completed without having returned to the quest giver to collect rewards. In the case of the goat milking quest, the player does have to report back to the quest giver, i.e. his wife. But what's interesting about this is that the player can choose to either complete the quest and then receive his rewards, or he's saying, well, no, I'm going to drink some of this milk because I need energy, and then maybe later I'll milk more goats to complete the quest, or I won't complete the quest. I can even just decide to milk goats and go sell it for money. So all of those are possibilities for him. So the world quest milk quotes can, if you want to, if you enable this checkmark, turn in without an NPC be completed without having to go back to the quest giver, in this case his wife. Just also keep in mind that if there are different quest givers that offers the same quest, you can take and accept the quest from quest giver 1 and complete it with quest giver 2 in a different location, either way. Now, as you may have realized by now, each quest is associated with tasks that needs to be completed for completing the quest. In our case, the objective, just another word for task. We have to milk a goat's task. Then the goat's task has the details of exactly what the player must do. Now, if we look at other quests as a side note, there might be a quest, for example, where the quest giver can provide an axe to help the player chop down wood in a tree chopping quest. But we are not giving the player anything up front, he just has to go and milk the goat. You could have done it where you say, well, you need a pot first, which you need to go and buy at a trader before you can milk a goat, and so on. A little more advanced, but still easy to understand. So under World Quest Milk Goats, under automatic rewards, we see that the item for the reward automatically, when the milking is complete, is 1 apple. And then he can choose if he also wants 1 energy potion or 1 stamina potion, depending on what he needs. Keeping in mind, you can also just drink the milk. but you could make it that it restores its energy slower, and a potion makes it go faster, and so on. Now looking at the world tasks for milk goats, we see that he has to get goat milk, 2 of them. He keeps them temporarily until he either consumes them, sells them, hands them in to the quest giver, and so on. So under items, goat milk, it's marked as type consumable, it's rare. You must have one to consume one. And when he does so, we trigger the goat milk effect. This is just showing that it can be sold. The goat milk effect is an instant heal. 20 energy points is given. Okay, so let's look inside the game what it feels like for the player to go milk a goat, for example.